going with the children. What I used to do, it's really hard not to leave with it. Matter of fact, I think Steve used to say, that's where you'd rather be. Well, I don't know about you, but I love Peter's style of discipleship. There are no half measures with Peter. He'll leap off a cliff if Jesus asks him to. His passion, his love, and energy fill him with enthusiasm that is infectious. He attracts others to come and meet Jesus. Peter's a shining example of discipleship. He claims Jesus as the Messiah before anyone else. He leaps into the water during a storm to walk with Jesus on the water. And he's the one who walks right into the tomb after the women tell them their story. And then after resurrection, Jesus asks Peter to feed his sheep. He gives him the great mission of feeding his sheep. The church has claimed Peter as their premier saint. His halo is shining brightly, right? But, big but here. In this very story that I read, and our other Linda will be reading as well, Peter falls flat on his face. Nothing new about it. He'll do it again, we know. First, Jesus calls him Satan, as if that isn't bad enough. Later on, God is basically going to say, shut up, Peter, and listen to Jesus. This is the side of Peter's disciple that I also love, because he does stupid things, and I do stupid things. He doesn't get it, not least right away, when Jesus teaches him. He needs it reiterated, at least more than once. And he's the one to deny Jesus on the very night of all those betrayals. I think the Lord must have been hurt most by Peter's betrayal. But Peter never gave up. He kept trying until he had actually led thousands of people to Christ. Now, if that example seems way back there and doesn't fit here in the now, let me give you an example not of a regular disciple, but of a really talented youth. His name is Boyan Slap. He's a 21-year-old Dutch boy. And he has his finger in the dike, but not the regular dike. This is the dike of pollution of our oceans. Every year, humans discharge roughly 8 million metric tons into the ocean, where fish and mammals and birds mistake the brightly colored stuff as food. So it's a disaster for our own food chain as well as an environmental disaster. Slap became aware of the pervasive nature of plastic on a scuba diving trip to Greece when he was only 16. 16 years old. Now, he was a bright 16-year-old. He'd already been designing, engineering tree houses and rockets and all sorts of things. But he followed it. And then he turned his attention to this global problem of pollution. And he invited others to the journey. And he's now grown a multi-million-dollar organization called Ocean Cleanup. And this June, they will launch their first prototype. Interesting. Boyan Slap reminds me of the disciple Peter in 3 ways. He's a risk taker, he learns from mistakes, and he gets others involved. And that's a discipleship we can all follow. Risk-taking, like stepping out onto a stormy sea or taking on a huge pollution problem, takes courage. Willingness to fail and look foolish is a must for a disciple. Now, if you really need to experience that, I suggest you go to an Ash Wednesday service. Get the mark of the cross on your head and walk around and see what happens. You never thought about that, right? But you do look a little silly with that smudge mark on your head. But do you know what the ashes are from? The ashes are from the palm branches of the year before. They're burned, and then they're mixed with olive oil so they'll stay on your head. And the palms of celebration are then reduced to ash, reminding us of our own dashed dreams of discipleship, and ultimately of our mortality, as the words are read, "You are dust, and to dust you shall return." Failing so often seems like a death, and we could avoid it at all costs. Most of us do not want to fail at anything. Perhaps that's why I'm so passionate about mission. It teaches us the value of risk-taking even when we fail. I took a youth group down to St. Louis after the flood. It was soon after we left here from Westminster and Decatur. The kids wanted to see the dead floating cows. That was their interest. We got to the warehouse, which is where we were going to help sort things. And we met a guy who had been all over the world with missions. And he said he'd seen rice rot on the pier because nobody came and got it. Mission happens that way. With the very best of intentions to feed the hungry, the food that's been donated doesn't get there. He talked about how he'd been stopped in places with gunmen and had to be turned around and go back and not do the mission he'd been sent to. Failure happens. You don't stop there. And that sort of reminded me of this picture, which, anybody whitewater raft? Come on, some of you whitewater raft, yeah. You're a risk taker. Yes. When you're whitewater rafting, you better be a risk taker. But what I love about it is you never enter a raft in a raft. You enter where the river is calm and quiet, and easy to get in and maneuver. And then later on, you're going to run into the rapids. So you have a little time there to work and figure out what doesn't work with your paddle. And you get a chance to get to know your team that you're with and figure out if you can manage this. Before you go down, that's probably a 4. I've been down to 5, and one woman before we went down said to her, now you'll notice that I don't think there's a guide in this one. That's just us in our youth group. There's usually sometimes some really dangerous, like the New River in Tennessee. You have a guide that does the paddling at the back. And somebody said to her, so has anybody ever died while you're whitewater rafting? And she said, we usually don't talk about that before 5. So she got out her helmet for the first time and put it on. But we made it. Failing. It's part of the process. And we need to care for one another. And you as a church have done that over and over again, cared for one another. And you'll hear over and over again about the ministries you've launched, maybe without any intention to do that. But you set the seeds into so many people. Now, will you be successful every time? Of course not, no. But will you learn from those failures? Yes. Critical to discipleship is getting others involved. The African proverb is, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. Let's try that again. If you want to go far, go together. Yes, together. And you are blessed. You're a part of a denomination. Did you think that was a blessing? Sometimes we don't think that's a blessing. But it is. Because you're not alone in this next part of your journey. You may be hitting some rough rapids, but there's a whole denomination there to help you. People who've been through those rapids before and can guide you. Chicago Presbyterian will be involved. Wow, that's a support you can't even imagine. And they'll be encouraging you to take risks and to learn from mistakes and to get everyone involved. And I believe you can do this and do it well. Years ago, a young woman asked me to do her wedding. She attended Willow Creek, and I said, honey, you have pastors up the kazoo there. What in the world do you need to do your wedding for? And she said, when I was little, you were Christ to me. Wow, that's discipleship. Enfleshing Christ in this world. Brothers and sisters at Southminster, when I was new in ministry, you were Christ to me. Steve, you were Christ to me. And my prayer is that you will continue to be Christ for the world.